Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and I feel like the happiest man in the world when I can talk about Microsoft's failings, man. When I can talk about that evil AI demon in the sky actually facing some pains. I am but a lowly peasant in the world of online entertainment, and I can sit here with my two thumbs in my hand and say, yeah, I enjoy watching a company falter a little bit. Turns out apparently no one's actually using Copilot. Now, I wanted to dig into this headline because I thought it was crazy shit. It's actually a lot more granular than one would think, okay? But to give you an idea, I want to kind of walk you guys through something simple. So on Linux, right, this is a terminal, and I don't want to hear shit from any Microsoft like cuckold out there. Well, you're going to use a terminal. Bro, I was literally whipping out the Windows terminal to kill Task Manager a month and a half ago. So excuse me, buddy. So of course in Linux, one thing that I can do is I can type in this one command that you're seeing right over here, throw in a little password, and whoa, look at that. I can just update my computer all without seeing my shit blanked out, no access, nothing. Now it's pretty simple for me to use my computer like this. I can actually audit every single thing that's installed. So for instance, packages like Arc, packages like Dolphin, Docker, Firefox, all the stuff a growing boy underneath Linux needs. It tells me exactly how big each of these packages are, how much I'm downloading, how much I'm installing, and even how much I'm saving. And all I have to do is tap that good old Y button, and all of a sudden it's doing this in the background. Now, of course, I can move that shit to the other monitor and talk to you about it here. The reason why I showed that is because that shows me exactly what's going into the computer I own. Now, I also own a television in front of me. This is an LG OLED TV that I bought like years ago, okay? I bought it because I was like, I need something for the gaming room over here, and it's a pretty damn good TV. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, it started installing Microsoft Copilot without my permission. So apparently some eagle-eyed Reddit people decided to look closer into their TV and wake up one day after a little system update without their consent, by the way. Okay, nobody consented to this. They woke up and saw Microsoft Copilot sitting there menacingly on a TV. Now, why the fuck would an actual AI app be needed on a television of all things? I really don't know, to be real with you. I don't know who would whip out Copilot on a TV and start asking it prompts and questions. I really just don't understand that. It makes no sense to me. But the key thing about it here is that this was installed without the person's consent. And a lot of people were kind of talking about this too, like there was a lot of shit being brought up. Apparently, Microsoft and LG are working together to make AI TV a thing. So I guess they want to implement all this crap into your television. Now I fired up my actual, LG TV, and thankfully I didn't actually see the Copilot app on my television. I mean, I actually did check around in it. I even checked for an update, but I think because I'm a Canadian, I didn't actually get the update into my television. So God bless, I haven't been fucking tarnished. Now, there's a channel on the internet called Louis Rossman, and he uses a term called like the rapist mentality, and I know that might perk some people's eyes up, right? Again, it's a very serious word, but the reason why it perks up eyeballs is because a lot of these tech companies act in a manner where they take literally, they don't ask for consent. Okay, they don't care. They're actually trying to push their power onto you. A lot of these companies would normally have to probably ask you if they wanted to install something, but no. We live in a day and age where you can buy like $1,000+ television. You can buy a few $1,000 smart fridge. You can buy like really expensive premium tech products, and like all of a sudden, without your consent, a tech company can just force its way into you. I bought this LG TV having nothing to fucking do with Microsoft, okay? And all of a sudden, Microsoft's forcing itself into my life through my television. I mean, maybe I will never just buy an LG TV anymore, okay? There's plenty of other vendors out there. I can go to probably Sony. I can go to fucking Samsung. I'm pretty sure I can go to like any other vendor, okay? TCL, anything. As long as I know that LG is willing to completely bend me over and insert things into my television without my consent, that means I don't need to spend my money there, okay? They're not the only person making televisions. So when I saw this kind of shit go up, immediately to me, it's not shocking, but a company like Microsoft needs to force itself onto you because they're actually kind of apparently losing the whole AI race to everyone else. So there was this like post from like Extreme Tech that came out like a couple days ago where they talked about Google Gemini is about to replace Copilot into third place. So really, it's not the fact that nobody is using AI. People just aren't using Microsoft's white label version of ChatGPT. Okay, nobody's whipping out fucking Copilot on the Windows systems. And, you know, this is the problem, right? Like Microsoft in the last few months, if you've obviously followed my channel or really any channel, they've been forcing themselves in so many ways into your computer. They want to turn Windows into the first agentic operating system. That's what the goal is. That's the intention, right? They want you to be using artificial intelligence for the tiniest things imaginable. And wow, my actual television just fired up a random video for no reason. And obviously, I'm sure that a lot of you guys probably don't care much for Copilot. You guys don't care much to have extra bloat in your already bloated operating system. You probably fire up Windows just to play some video games, you know, watch some, browse the internet, watch some videos, maybe do some creative work on. You don't really care all that much about having Copilot look through your personal files, using it to do the most mundane tasks on your computer. I mean, we've seen so many Copilot ads where literally people are asking it to do the most basic shit in the control settings, and Copilot still has to walk you through doing it yourself. Okay, it's not something that people really care about. We're burning too many resources for not enough gain. Now, that being said, again, like I said, I'm not a complete anti AI person. Like, I think local models are really cool. Installing local AI stuff is actually pretty cool. I've even shown you local stuff from Microsoft that I think is actually pretty damn impressive. But to go into it, right, this actual like article came from a platform known as The Information. Now, I'm not going to pay The Information like $300 to go into it, or 400, whatever their annual or pro fees are. At the end of the day, there was enough information to come out of these people to show that, again, Microsoft was willing to be a little bit on the defensive. They said the information story inaccurately combines the concept of growth and sales quotas, and that aggregate sales quotas for AI products have not been lowered. Okay, so Microsoft's getting pretty fucking defensive in this situation. But again, the facts don't they don't shy away. Nobody is necessarily out there using Copilot's suite of tools when things like ChatGPT exist, and obviously Google's Gemini also exists. It's not that artificial intelligence is suddenly going away. It's not. Actually, quite a lot of people use it. It just is pretty evident, and at least, you should kind of see it, that nobody is using Microsoft's white label crap version of Copilot. Nobody really cares about that nonsense. It's not the fact that AI doesn't exist. If you've noticed on the internet, we've reached peak dead internet theory levels where basically every single short form video at this point, I'm pretty sure, is just AI generated shit. YouTube literally released like an application the other day where, again, like creators can like use VO3 and just like start pushing more AI slop onto the platform. And of course, ultimately at the end of the day, there's still a lot of people that use AI stuff for things like coding, right? Like there's a lot of people that are using it it's basically everywhere in the software development field. It's one of those things where I always find it weird when I talk to like AI artist people and they're like, fuck AI generative art and fuck AI generative music. And I do tend to agree. I find all that stuff to be very soulless, very identifiable, and not in the good way. But it's always funny when people look at that with severe disdain. But when it comes to people writing code in artificial intelligence, it seems like that is just a generally much more accepted practice, even though, in my opinion, I think the person drawing with the pen should be just as protected as a person writing code on their keyboard. But writing code with AI is pretty much a standard thing these days. A lot of IDEs have support for local AI models that I've shown, where you can use artificial intelligence to help you write code. And then, now we're at a point where we're using AI to write code, and we're just kind of correcting it. But this is a big tangent that I don't need to go further into. For Microsoft Copilot purposes, Microsoft's tools and selections don't seem to exactly be grabbing people by the fucking like, neck. They're not exactly that exciting to jump down. And again, when it comes to again people using shit, obviously ChatGPT is literally 61% of the market. They're like actually the big dogs. When it basically anytime somebody thinks of AI, they associate it with ChatGPT, and that's pretty much it. And of course, Gemini is literally 1% behind Microsoft because even though I don't like Google Gemini either, I can tell you right now from a usability standpoint, it's definitely far more impressive than white label ChatGPT that Microsoft is offering. So even with like what a billion users that use Microsoft's like Windows, they're still not reaching the numbers that I guess they kind of envisioned for. And this is where I guess people kind of talk about AI being a bubble. When we talk about bubbles, right? Remember back in the early 90s, there was the .com bubble where a lot of websites kind of came up. It's not that, there weren't successors out of that field. There are companies like Google and whatnot. But for most people, like if you ran any .com company, if you didn't provide value, right? Like let's say you were like pets.com or something, you probably were less valued than something like Google. And then you probably went the way of the dodo. You went extinct. And that's similar to what a lot of these AI companies and efforts are going to go, except we're actually putting substantially more money and resources into it. Microsoft's put so much money into AI, it's actually insane. Microsoft has kind of abandoned whatever they had in favor of like this AI stuff. And I'm so glad to see that it's actually not paying off. We live in a day and age where like a lot of the hardware we want to buy for our computers is becoming so expensive because of these AI bros. And the more and more of these companies end up faltering and they don't actually provide real tangible return on investments, which is what it seems like Microsoft is kind of going to go through in the next couple of years, we'll actually start to see a big crash in this. And some of those pieces of hardware that we want, like RAM, SSDs at this point, will actually go to more sane prices. At least that's the fucking hopium that I inject into my veins on a day-to-day basis alongside Gamer Subs, Code Sog, by the way. What's also worth talking about in this case is apparently there have been Israeli cybersecurity agencies like Tenable, which, they've done a pretty good job. This is from like the best of the best in the world. They were able to trick Microsoft Copilot's agents, like these zero code sort of agents, that again, people can make. And apparently these companies that were using this kind of stuff, they were able to bypass identity checks and disclose things like payment card information, things that would generally be handled underneath industry standards for these payment cards. The researchers were saying that the agent was revealing this, after things like malicious instructions. So remember, this is what it comes down to, right? Like the user can say, hey, this is my name. Can you help me with that booking number? And of course, they reveal basically everything down to the credit card number here, the prices, yada, yada, yada. So the reality of all this is that ultimately, if you're going to be using this kind of stuff, you better understand that you're opening yourself up to a new wave of attack at this point. And, it never really used to be like this. I feel like this technology has a lot more negatives than the actual positives. And really, most people that I talk to, and even outside of things like Copilot, people do just generally ask, what is the point of an internet that is consuming way more resources and not really giving that much of the benefit back that I guess it used to, right? At this point, people isolating themselves into smaller forum boards and communities that are, relieved of this kind of stuff might actually be the way down the future. And I'm not even so much opposed to that. A lot of these like AI companies too, when it comes to agentic capabilities, back in June 2025, there was an entire like PDF, an entire like research paper that ended up coming out that apparently 70% of these like tasks that the AI agents were asked for ended up with failure. So they made this company called the Agent Company, which is supposed to be the small software development group. And the employees literally include computer scientists and software engineers, jobs well understood by the research teams. And then, of course, they also had sales, human resources, yada, yada, yada. So they put 10 AI agents through all of their paces and benchmarks, and of course the tasks came out that apparently the best of them, such as Claude 3.5 Sonnet, only completed 24% of the tasks. Google's Flash came in at 11.4%, and GPT-4 came in at 8.6%. So if you're necessarily worried that AI is going to replace you, I think we're going to be worried a lot about AI hallucinations and errors down the road. Now, of course, that doesn't mean the models don't get better. They absolutely do. but they also do get more expensive to run as time also goes on too. You know, a model that came out in the early days of AI uses far less resources than some of the reasoning stuff that is everywhere these days. You know, one guy on Reddit says it pretty good. The low usage for Microsoft Copilot isn't integrated into enough apps and is difficult to locate. I do actually tend to agree. I think Microsoft, if they actually had adoption rates, would go higher if they actually made Copilot on every single mouse click and keystroke. Like, imagine if they just forced it everywhere in Windows, which is kind of what they're doing, simply to raise those numbers up. Again, it's all just a sham for the investors, right? Like the investors, the fucking executives that are looking into this company, looking into these things, thinking that they're sitting on the next gold rush, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're like a business owner, what's the best thing possible? The best thing is to replace everyone in your company with a fucking agent that works 24/7 you don't have to pay them a salary, you don't have to pay them benefits, you don't have to pay them anything. You know, ultimately, at the end of the day, the AI stuff will never be for me and you. A lot of the stuff like AGI that these companies push, I'll tell you right now, will never show up in your hands. Mostly because why would they give something like that to you? If they could give you an all powerful artificial intelligence that can upgrade itself and create the next best business, why would they ever give that to the average person? No, in fact, for most of us, artificial intelligence is the shit we have today, and then it will be a severely neutered version of whatever comes down the road. And obviously, at that point, prices will jack up like substantially if this train tends to stay at its course. But yeah, obviously, when it comes to things like Microsoft's Copilot, watching Microsoft falter like this is actually really good to see. Seeing that Copilot isn't as successful as anything, hopefully, might make Microsoft change gears. I really doubt it because ultimately, at this point, they just cut so many people out of their company and they use Copilot for so many things. And it's not just on Windows, right? Even on Xbox with games like Call of Duty, you've obviously noticed how much generative AI slop sits inside their video games. They're literally trying to make every single one of their IPs that used to have value into valueless slop AI machines, AI like vendors at this point. Microsoft Windows used to be a pretty stable operating system, in my opinion, and now you're looking at something that constantly breaks down at the every single update because something just has an issue. There's another bug that pops up, and I think the finger pointing at AI development might actually be pretty fucking valid in this case. But anyways, I've yapped on far more than I needed to. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. Rest easy, ladies and gentlemen. It seems like we're looking at some positive times ahead, hopefully. Not that AI is ever going to go away. I think in some aspects, it's always going to be around. There's always going to be AI and things like coding in the future. But I think when it comes to a lot of these agentic things that take up so many resources for very little gain, we're going to see a big schism in this market. And hopefully, I hope with Microsoft's recent actions, they absolutely suffer down the road. But ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.